Two Christian conservative GOP lawmakers, Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Alabama Senator Katie Britt, are trying to help Democrats shore up access to in vitro fertilization, or IVF, with the IVF Protection Act. The pair introduced a bill to protect access to the treatment after Democrats attempted and failed to do so in a measure in March. Britt and Cruz have this to say to Bloomberg earlier this week.
And both Katie and I agree that IVF is incredibly pro-family, that we should be standing and helping parents who want to raise kids. We came together and said, let's draft a simple, straightforward federal bill that creates a federal right, that you as a parent have a right to have access to IVF. If you want to have a child and you need medical assistance to do so, that should be your right.
In a joint Wall Street Journal op-ed on Monday, they said the legislation would require, as a condition of receiving federal Medicaid funding, that states don't prohibit IVF.
Recent concerns about IVF in America stem from Britt's home state of Alabama, which ruled in February that embryos in IVF are considered children under the Wrongful Death of a Minor Act. Now, within the first week of that ruling, 2 of the 8 fertility clinics in Alabama paused their IVF treatments in fear that embryos could be destroyed. But after weeks of backlash, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed a GOP-proposed bill to protect IVF.
You could say the abortion and reproductive rights issue is the Achilles heel of the Republican Party. That's because after the Supreme Court ruling on Dobbs, many red states have either banned or severely restricted the right to terminating pregnancies, no matter the circumstances. 2 years since this decision, the majority of women are on the side of legal abortion access. A Kaiser Family Foundation health policy poll conducted last month found 35% of women say abortion should be legal in all cases, and 39% say it should be legal in most cases. Some liberals are saying the Britt and Cruz bill is just a PR move for the Republican Party to save face with voters. One Twitter user wrote in response to Britt's announcement of the bill, "Handmaid says what?" Another, "What happened to the unused embryos, senators?" Yeah, this is a real vulnerability from Republicans. My hesitation is that, yes, it's a gift for Democrats. It's a gift the Democrats don't deserve because they said they were going to codify abortion access. Barack Obama ran on it, and then when he became president and was asked about why it wasn't a priority, he just said, it's not a priority for me right now. So I think it's really sick and disgusting for Democrats to be putting the women of America in this position. However, here we are, and it's because of Republicans. And it's because Donald Trump pledged to appoint justices that would overturn Roe. They did, in fact, do that, and now there are all these very obvious downstream consequences from that. We're seeing this all across the country, and you're seeing Republicans having to pivot. Carrie Lake in Arizona has been, before Dobbs was overturned, bragging about how much she loves this 1860 bill that effectively bans all abortions in the state. Now, post-Dobbs, she's walking that back saying, of course, that's a bridge too far. And now you're seeing this out of Alabama, that a natural downstream consequence from not having the right to an abortion is that IVF, something that is very pro-family. It's literally trying to have a kid when it's difficult for you to do it without medical intervention, is undermined, is imperiled by these rules, which are really unclear as to whether or not you as a fertility doctor are going to be hauled off to jail because a consequence of doing fertility treatment is that there may be some embryos that are fertilized eggs that are not going to be used. And are you going to tell a mother that unless you impregnate all of those embryos that you are killing babies and that you should be sent to jail for murder?
Yeah, I mean, Ted Cruz and Katie Britt agree, and they structured a bill to encourage states not to do that. And it seems that there isn't a lot of even conservative or social conservative support for making IVF illegal. So there is some consensus on this issue, and it seems fine and good to me to have legislation to combat that, the fear of that taking hold.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Katie Britt and Ted Cruz, it goes a lot farther than just IVF. And I think the fact that they are trying to sort of fill in gaps here and there and pinpoint, kind of selectively decide which rights women should have that are in accordance with their own personal political agenda and being fruitful and multiply isn't going fast enough. And the poll that we cited that shows the overwhelming majority of women think that abortion should be available in all or most circumstances really demonstrates how out of touch the Republican Party is with the American electorate. Now, luckily for Republicans, and we read from these poll results, I think yesterday or the day before, the majority of Americans don't actually blame Donald Trump for the lack of access to abortion services for whatever reason. And I think that's why you're seeing so much money and emphasis being put behind ads that tell that story coming out of the Biden campaign. I do wonder what kind of effect that's going to have going forward. And if he can leverage the public discontent with Republicans and their aggressiveness on this issue to get people to realign with him as he's really flailing, especially in these swing states.
Sure. I think he is, not talking about this issue or making clear that there should not be a federal abortion policy. And so, states can and the voters in various states have different views on where they think the line should be on abortion, whether it should be legal in up to 10 weeks, 15 weeks, beyond that, in some exceptions, what the actual line should be. There's no consensus on that in the country. People in different states feel differently. And now, because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, people can make those decisions democratically for themselves where that line should be. And that should be the Republican position and is the Republican position of most national,
that's
federal
how we
Republican.
got here. Throwing it to the states is exactly what Dobbs did. And what we're seeing
and
is
Republicans support doing that. And so we did that. Yes.
Right. And the people don't like it, which is why you have Carrie Lake having to run from her previous abortion perspective, because no one believes that an 1860 law that bans abortion is the right thing to do. And while there is this
no one,
fiction,
including Carrie Lake, apparently.
and
So now they're over there. They're legislatively fixing that.
But she did believe it, but now she has time to change her mind because she's the dog that caught the car. Now she's facing political consequences for supporting the women losing their right to choose. And so there's been this fiction historically from Republicans that say, well, red states want this and blue states want that. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing when this comes down to a ballot issue in places like Kansas, in places like Ohio, in places like Arizona, in places like Alabama now, women actually do not like the Republican agenda for them, which is not to have such an infringement on their relationship with their doctors that they're women who have been going through the IVF process, which is extremely expensive, extremely emotionally taxing, finally get to a place where they have successfully gotten some embryos that they can implant and risk undermining that entire process because a Republican, because Donald Trump specifically, went about trying to appoint justices to the Supreme Court that would overturn in 50 years of settled law and come between them and being able to start a family.
Yes, and say that people can democratically decide that there is a time period in which the rights of the unborn child matter and you cannot terminate that pregnancy, and we are going to interfere in your right to do that because there's not a right to harm something that is itself entitled to a certain amount of protection under the law. That's the Republican position.
Yeah,
if you disagree with that, you can vote against it.
That's 100% right. I'm glad you said that.
And the Democratic position is up until birth, you can murder the entity growing inside you. So that can be the Democratic position, and if you vote for that, that's just fine. The Republican position is there are going to be some limits on that.
Christ on a cracker. We get it. Yes, but Democrats want to kill babies. They've been using that line for years. It hasn't worked. You just read the polls. People understand that that's a lie.
The polls show that there is a mix of views on abortion. Some Americans think it should be legal in all circumstances. Some think it should be illegal in virtually all circumstances. Some think it should be somewhere in the middle.
The statistic, Robby.
Which was 35% of women said all, another 35% said some, and then we didn't read the rest. That doesn't add up to 100. Then there's another category that says something else. There's a range of opinions, and we're going to reflect the diversity of that in the states and have them decide.
That 70% of women think that they should have access to abortion. That's the point. In most or all circumstances, that's the poll we just read. Most or all circumstances.
Right, and I agree that I think there are circumstances where it should be legal and circumstances where it should not be, and I can vote for that, and you can vote for your way, and we'll see who wins.
I don't need to have this debate. You know what the facts are.
Okay, we don't need to have any more debates.
After this.